creating a new client meeting. So you'll notice on your project page, we have this little meeting section where you can switch between this week and next week and all meetings. This is going to be a library, kind of a history of all of your different meetings and then your agendas and your notes from those meetings. So you can always go in and hit the new button here, and that's going to create a new template. Ideally, you're going to use these buttons up here. So if we create a new client meeting right here, now we can open it up and we can, first off, we want to make sure that it's tied to the right project. It should autofill this. If it doesn't autofill this, then go in and click this and it'll add that project. Next, we want to set the time. Again, it's using the same deadline property as our tasks because they're interconnected, but we're going to use this to schedule the date and time of our meeting. So let's say that this is a client meeting set for next Monday. Ideally, we're going to include the time as well. So maybe we say it's going to be at 2:45 p.m. Now that's already in there and that's going to be on the calendar. Next, we just want to tag any of the creatives who are going to be invited to this. So maybe we'll tag Bryson, maybe we'll add another student who's going to be involved. Most meetings, we want to keep them fairly small, but anyone who's on our internal teams who's going to be in that meeting, we want to tag here because then they'll be able to really quickly and easily access all of those. If we go through and name this, if you aren't quite sure what to name it, we can name it by the client itself. So again, if it's an audiology clinic, this is the name that we're going to use right now. And we can just leave it at that. We can leave it at client meeting because the date is already tied here. We don't need to add the date to the meeting title right here. Again, it can be helpful, but it's not necessarily always needed to tag the department. But if we know it's going to be a design-focused meeting, maybe we tag the design department. At the very least, account management should be tagged. That way the account managers can keep their eye on it and know what they're looking at. Here we've got kind of a general guide with recommendations of how to approach preparing for a meeting. So we've got this agenda basics section right here, outlining what you should be doing to prepare for a meeting. Make sure that you're sending your agenda in advance to the internal team and to the client, and that you're also sending a Microsoft Outlook meeting invite to all participants. That's everyone at BYU Idaho, and that's to the client directly as well. So you're going to create an agenda in here, and then you would copy and paste this. You're not going to share the Notion link. You are just going to copy and paste the agenda from here, along with a note into that email that you send out to the client at least 24 hours in advance. And you make sure that you're having a debrief after the meeting where you then are creating the agenda for the next meeting. This can be really helpful, this prep note section. This is where you can just gather all of your thoughts on what do you think you need to cover as you're talking to the different department heads, as you're talking to the client. Identify everything that you need to go over in that meeting. And again, oftentimes this is going to come from the notes from the previous meeting. So this is kind of an optional section, but it can be really helpful for organizing your thoughts before you then map it out into an agenda. So let's say we know we want to look at logo drafts together with the client. We know we want to look at website wireframes with the client. And we know we want to ask some clarifying questions on brand voice. So we know that these are the main things that we want to hit on. So then you're going to go through and structure this into the agenda. So again, maybe we have a welcome and a recap. Oftentimes it's going to be a helpful way to structure a meeting. It's to start with a welcome and a recap and introductions if there's anybody new to the team that the client hasn't met yet. We'll add that, and then you always want to add who it is that's leading that. So in this case, maybe this is going to be me leading that part of the conversation. And then we can look at our notes and talk to our teams and figure out how do we want to structure this best. So maybe we want to start with following up on brand voice. So sometimes the meeting is going to be best if you lead with questions and then have updates. Other meetings are going to flow better if you start with updates and then have questions. And then maybe we schedule a logo review. Then maybe we schedule website wireframe review. And then we always want to plan time at the end for those final questions. And And then we want to make sure we set aside time for action items. So I've gone through and mapped this out. The nice thing with this is you can always drag these around. If we decide actually we want to bring these questions down here, you can click and drag that and reorder it really nicely. The minute markers here, this is mostly just so you have a place to have those minute markers. Realistically, okay, maybe this is going to take 5 minutes, so then this starts 10 minutes in. This is probably going to take a little bit of time, so then this is 25 minutes in. That's going to take another little bit of time, so then we say that's going to be 40 minutes in, 50 minutes in, 55 minutes in. You want to ideally structure your meeting so it never runs longer than an hour, but feel free to change those minute markers to whatever time makes sense. And again, as you're sending it to the client, you probably want to put the actual meeting time. So actually, if we know that we're meeting at 2:45, maybe that's where we start this, is we put that at 2:45, and then here we put this is at 2:55. And you can go through and update that. Again, make sure that you're tagging everybody here. That way, they can look at this, they'll get a notification, and they can jump right back in here and see, yep, this is what I'm slated to talk about, and they can prepare any of their internal notes. Then down here, you want to make sure whenever you have a meeting that you have somebody set aside who's in charge of taking notes during the meeting. Oftentimes it's not the account manager leading the meeting, but it's going to be a secondary contributor. Maybe it's one of the department heads who's contributing and only speaking on one part. The nice thing again with this shared document that everybody's tagged in is everyone can actually be taking notes at the same time. So someone will go through and keep these notes and then write down those action items, talk through all of those action items with the client, and make sure that they're all documented here, that you have a follow-up date, that you have a person assigned to it. And then again, after a meeting, you'll have a debrief where you talk about how it went, and you'll make sure that these action items are clearly divvied out to each individual person, and that we then add tasks in Notion as needed with these follow-up items. That's all you really need to know about creating a client meeting. Again, I'll show you quickly where you can then view this. If we jump back to the project page, we can see it right in here. Again, it's pulling up this filter right now, but we'll be able to see that meeting right here when it loads. So you'll notice it's not under this week, it's under next week because that's where it should be pulling from. If you're not seeing it here, try going to all meetings and you'll be able to see it there. Sometimes the filters don't always pull it up. So if when in doubt, go to all meetings and you should be able to see it there with the date and time and some of those additional notes there. You can also see it on your individual task page. If it's assigned to me, I can go to tasks and I should see it showing up on here. Again, I've got a lot of things showing up on here, but you'll often see those meetings in here. You can also go just to my tasks page if it's getting a little overwhelming. And you've got all of your tasks there. But then down here you have all of my meetings. And you'll notice that's showing up on my meeting calendar right here. So any meeting that I'm a part of, I can go to this calendar and really quickly look at all of the different agendas for those meetings and filter them from there. And that's all you need to know about creating a client meeting.